Venus Williams to make first Australian Open appearance since 2021. She will also make Australian Open history with her wildcard bid. At age 45, and newlywed, Venus Williams isn't slowing down anytime soon. The tennis legend doesn't compete on the court very often, but she will continue competing at the Australian Open this month after being named a wildcard entry. With this bid, Williams will make her first appearance at the major tournament since 2021. She hasn't competed outside of the United States since 23 either. It will mark her first tournament played as a married woman, too, as Williams will make Australian Open history with her appearance. She will be the oldest woman to compete in the main draw at the tournament, surpassing the previous record held by Japan's Kimiko Date, who was 44 during his 2015 performance. "I'm excited to be back in Australia and looking forward to competing during the Australian summer," Williams said via a press release. "I've had so many incredible memories there, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to return to a place that has meant so much to my career." Williams competed in 3 tournaments in 2025, including at the US Open. She won her first singles match since August 2023 back in July of last year at the DC Open. She followed up that performance with an appearance at the Cincinnati Open before finishing her year at the US Open. We might get to see more of Williams on the tennis court in 2026 as she starts her season early in 2026. The 45-year-old notably last appeared in an Australian Open final in 2017 against her sister Serena, who won the title in straight sets. The elder Williams sister hasn't captured an Australian Open title in her career, but has won 7 major singles titles. Venus Williams, the long road back to Melbourne. Melbourne has always been a place of memory for Venus Williams. The blue courts of the Australian Open, shimmering beneath the January sun, have seen her power, her poise, and her persistence. They have heard the thunder of her serve and the quiet determination in her footsteps between points. And now, after years marked by absence, injury, and reflection, Venus Williams stands once more on the edge of Rod Laver Arena, ready to make her first Australian Open appearance since 2021. For many athletes, time away from the sport signals the slow closing of a chapter. For Venus, time has always been something to confront, not fear. A champion beyond numbers. Venus Williams' career cannot be contained by statistics alone, though they are staggering. 7 Grand Slam singles titles. 4 Olympic gold medals. Dozens of weeks as world number 1. A legacy intertwined with the modern power game and the transformation of women's tennis itself. But Venus has never been defined only by winning. She has been defined by endurance. From her earliest days, she carried expectations heavier than most players ever face. Expectations not just to succeed, but to change the sport. Alongside her sister Serena, Venus reimagined what dominance looked like, what strength sounded like, and what confidence meant for generations of players who followed. Her presence in tennis has always been larger than the scoreboard. The years away. When Venus last appeared at the Australian Open in 2021, the world was different, and so was her journey. Injuries had begun to interrupt her rhythm. A chronic autoimmune condition demanded careful management. The tennis calendar became less predictable, more selective. For fans, her absences felt unfamiliar. Venus had always been there, year after year, tournament after tournament. Seeing her schedule thin raised inevitable questions. Was this the beginning of the end? Would we see her again on the sport's biggest stages? Venus, as she has done her entire career, answered not with words, but with patience. She trained quietly. She recovered deliberately. She chose her moments. Why Melbourne matters? The Australian Open is often called the Happy Slam, but for Venus, it represents something deeper, resilience in unfamiliar territory. Unlike Wimbledon, where she ruled like royalty, Melbourne was never her most forgiving Grand Slam. The heat, the long rallies, the punishing schedule, each year tested her physically and mentally. And yet, she returned again and again, refusing to let discomfort define her limits. To return now, after years away, is not about reclaiming dominance. It is about honoring the relationship she has always had with competition itself. Stepping onto the Australian Open courts again is an act of courage, not because Venus has something to prove, but because she continues to choose challenge over comfort. A different kind of comeback. This is not the comeback of a teenager chasing a first dream. It is the return of a legend who understands exactly what the journey demands. Venus Williams no longer plays to silence doubters. She plays to stay connected to the game that shaped her, the game she helped shape in return. Every match now carries a different weight, less urgency, more meaning. Her serve still cracks through the air. Her movement, refined by decades of experience, carries an economy younger players are still learning. And her presence alone alters the atmosphere of a stadium. Crowds do not merely watch Venus play, they witness her. In an era obsessed with youth, Venus reminds the sport that greatness does not expire. Inspiration across generations. For younger players, Venus' return is a living lesson. She shows that careers do not have to follow straight lines. That pauses do not erase purpose. That strength can evolve rather than disappear. For fans, especially those who grew up watching her, her presence in Melbourne feels like meeting an old friend in a familiar place. Time may have passed, but the connection remains intact. Venus represents something rare in professional sports: longevity without compromise. She has never rushed her return, never bowed to external pressure, never allowed expectation to dictate her choices. She arrives on her own terms. More than a match. Whether her Australian Open journey ends in the early rounds or stretches deep into the tournament matters less than the moment itself. Each point played is a statement that passion can outlast prediction and commitment can survive uncertainty. Venus Williams does not need another trophy to confirm her place in history. That place is secure, etched into the sport's foundation. What she offers now is something subtler and perhaps more powerful. A reminder that love for the game can endure long after the spotlight shifts. As Melbourne welcomes her back, the applause will not just be for what she does next, but for everything she has already given. The legacy continues. When Venus Williams walks onto the Australian Open court for the first time since 2021, she carries more than a racket. She carries decades of progress, resilience, and belief. Belief that there is always room for return. Belief that greatness is not confined by age. Belief that tennis, at its best, is a lifelong conversation between the player and the court. And once again, Melbourne is ready to listen.